train them. We've got to train them and make sure they're able to work. So it's a great challenge and opportunity to develop.
Great. Jan?
Well, I would go into what Armando said with the potential of a lot of volume that you have in the country, especially a lot of people and businesses that are not yet included into the financial system brings a lot of opportunity. So already, only if you think about the SME market, all of the businesses that do not yet have any digital products or financial products, already with them alone you would have a huge customer base.
Yeah, I'll add something else. The competition landscape, and that goes from Mexico to all the way Latin America. You have like 8 banks serving 80% of the population, whereas in the US or Europe, more developed countries, you have tons of banks competing. So I think it's an easier sell for a fintech to say they're going to disrupt the big guys.
Sure. And until today, what entry barriers have you found in LatAm and in Mexico?
Well, for us coming from Switzerland, it was surely the entire Mexican framework, which was a bit difficult to understand at first. We were, especially when it came into hiring talent, we found it hard, like, to estimate what is the gross cost at the end of the day for an employee, because at the end of the day, if you do it how you should do it, you're paying quite a lot of social costs on top of the salary. And that, like, at the beginning, we didn't expect such a high gross salary as we see how it is now.
Well, barriers of entry, I guess, as you were saying, Armando, the 8 oligopolic banks, the strongest banks, have made a great job in creating those, and it's become actually quite expensive to now have a fintech. Fintechs now have found a way. For example, we are in fintech. We found a way through gift cards or prepaid cards, and that's how we get regulated, just as any gift card, which is much easier. And I've also heard about many fintechs who leverage a bank or leverage a SOFIPO or another entity, so they don't have to be regulated. This is right now the government's taking, which is, I guess, over-regulating a little bit. No, like, I mean, we have debates regarding this, but the U.S. approach is proven to be the best. It's kind of like let innovation flourish, and then you see how you regulate it. Here, I think it's taking a little bit in advance the fact of regulating this thing. So,
well, again, I mean, we talked about that also before. I also don't think, like, from our perspective, I think actually that the FinTech law comes in as a very positive. If we're talking, for example, about the US, where we also were looking into entering the market, the cost was actually much higher for us to get in if we would want to get a license there, because we would have had to get the money transmitter license, which is much more expensive than getting the FinTech license in Mexico. And so, as we said before, there's other options like banking as a service, which luckily are now coming up in Mexico as well. But at the end of the day, I think it can also be a big benefit for a FinTech to be licensed. I think it also gives investors more trust on the other hand, so it might also help with fundraising.
Yeah, I think the FinTech law created both barriers and opportunities. It kind of legalized the activities, so it brought a lot of outside money that was looking for that type of security. And also it built barriers for newcomers. Now you need, I guess, more funding, more experience, which I think is a good thing. But barriers in general, they don't work towards innovation. So, yeah.
The three of you talked about a very important aspect about regulation. In the last couple of years, in Mexico, the law has been developing, and it has brought opportunities and a little bit of barriers into the sector. What should startups do to keep innovating apart from this law? Normally, there is the sandbox that some startups may use, but what is the path that startups should take to keep innovating in the FinTech ecosystem?
Well, I think when it comes in hand, once you get the FinTech law, I would say the first thing is to have a strong compliance team. Like, not outsource everything, but what we have seen, we have always taken compliance as a strength since we started in Switzerland. Then we were also regulated in Europe. And we saw that if you get great people in the compliance area, they can actually help you being innovative within the framework that the regulator is giving you. And that sometimes even gives you ways on doing things differently and still in a compliant way. So it's, I think, the compliance, maybe compliance will even become more important with time in Mexico. And I think that's somewhere where startups should also start to look into more seriously.
And I would complement Jan's opinion saying startups should iterate and pivot as much as they can without really worrying too much about regulation until it's actually an issue you need to fix or you need to work on. It actually surprised me to see, I don't know if you guys have seen these Chinese bicycles you can just get on the street and unlock with a key. And I was impressed to see all their terms and conditions and all their legal documents on the app were actually written in Chinese. Like, you could see the Chinese signs in there. I was like, wow, this is completely legal for Mexico, no? But the bikes are still there, and you can still unlock them and use them. So I guess as long as you're still keeping your pivoting and you're learning and you're approaching product market fit, I guess you should not worry too much about regulation. Of course, have a legal strategy, right?
I love that. Okay, what a fintech startup should be doing and will overcome the biggest barrier that I see in the market is building trust. You have to build trust with the customers, with regulators, with investors, with your employees. And the reason why is if you're building a fintech service, it usually sounds too good to be true. Like when we started back in 2011 lending money through Facebook, most of the people thought we were a scam. So we were daily saying that we were real. And then when the regulators found about us, the same story, and with investors, and I see most of the fintech startups that come up with no commissions, then people naturally say like, no commissions, there must be something hidden there. There's a saying here in Mexico that goes, la burra no era bizca, la hicieron. Which I don't really know how to translate, but it says something about the donkey not being cross-eyed. They made it that way. It's because people have been scammed so many times over the years that now if you come up with an innovative service, especially related to money, they're going to be like, oh, no, my grandmother fell for that one, not me. I'm falling for Bitcoin.
All right, I want to change a little bit about topic, and I want to talk about cash. So in Mexico and in LatAm, cash is king. And I want to know about your opinion regarding how fintechs are disrupting the use of cash. Are fintechs going to make people less dependent on it? And how are you going to do it?
I think most likely everyone will agree that cash is not always the best solution. Something that I don't understand that much is that there's always this constant bash on banning cash, or we have to get cash. Because first of all, I think it's rather important that we have a good strategy to transition from today's cash-heavy society into a more cashless society, right? So we can't just go cashless from today to tomorrow, otherwise the ones who are excluded will be excluded even more. But that's, I think, the first point. And secondly, I also don't think that it should be so much around do we want to use cash or not, but rather trying to give the consumers
cash has many benefits, the use of cash, and it also has many pains. No, so we've noticed, for example, cash. You don't need an internet connection that's fast for you to transact. You can also be anonymous while using cash. Something we do at My Cashless is mimic the use of cash with technology, kind of like digitalizing the use of cash. So we allow users to be anonymous, and we don't need an internet connection, which makes it as fast or even. And that's why merchants, I guess, they get to the extreme of saying, we want to be cashless and ban cash and all that, which of course makes no sense. Like Sweden right now just passed a law where even though they're 90% a cashless country, they do not allow merchants to not take cash, you know?
And cash usage actually increased last year as well in Sweden.
It did, okay. And I heard it was kind of like a kind of fear, because what if we run out of the internet or out of technology or whatever? What if something happens? We need to have a fallback process that works, no? So I guess it's a challenge. It will be solved at some point. Maybe just not the current approach, no?
Yeah, cash has a lot of good features. For example, privacy. I can pay you in cash and nobody can track that down. Which is one of the reasons why in Latin America, starting from Argentina all the way here to Mexico, people love cash because you can avoid fiscalization. And it's not because we don't like paying taxes, it's just so hard and it scares you. So the majority of people, they just want to avoid that struggle. And the other reason that I think cash is king here in Mexico is that there is an informal economy that works really well. I mean, it does work, it's not broken, it works this chaotic way, but it solves the problem for most of the people. So I think most of the wallets that are coming into Mexico that are offering cashless services are missing those two important points. So it's something to be aware of. People like using cash.
So, what is your opinion on what doing with Banco de Mexico and CODI regarding cash and this approach to making society more cashless?
Yeah, so I'll give everybody a quick intro on CODI. CODI was launched by Banco de Mexico, and it's a payment system, a real-time gross settlement system, just as SPAY. It actually runs on SPAY, which is 99% of transactions in Mexico are being done through that payment network. And CODI will allow any user to generate a QR code or an NFC signal so they can pay another user. This is free of charge. This will compete with the PayPals, the Mercado Pagos, and it's been done by the government, and again, it's free.
It's a great idea, I agree. It's just allowing people to get it somebody else's bank account in a scan and just transfer any amount in a second for free. So,
Would you think people use it?
I think so. At the moment, I know that banks haven't done good work launching it. Like the times that they were supposed to comply with, they're not being met. But it's going to take a while for users to, again, build trust on that payment system and start using it. At the moment, if I wanted to send money to my friend Enrico, I will have to set up his account number and my account, wait for 30 minutes, and then send the money, which is a process that it's super dumb because I have to ask for 18 numbers. And with CODI, we can do that in less than 30 seconds, 3 seconds. So it's super easy. So I think once that benefit hits the culture, I think CODI is going to blow up.
I think the only problem there is that you also have to do the investment on the consumer side, because at the end of the day, it's for banks mainly, right? I mean, if you have a connection to Banco de Mexico, you can use it too as a FinTech, for example, but you need a bank account of some sort. So the problem is also that the government wants to get rid of cash with Cody and they want to get more financial inclusion, but still you need to get those people who nowadays don't have a bank account into the banking system.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm going to defend Banco Mexico, but they're actually doing a great job with this. Listen up, we have 43 banks in Mexico, about 42 Sofipos and 40 Casas de Bolsa, stock exchange, that they can traders. And those are the only 3 entities that were able to connect to the SPADE network, which controls Cody. So it had this great, huge barrier. And recently, they opened it up for fintechs to be allowed to connect directly to the SPADE network. So I think this is a really game changer. We're going to see a lot of push for the Cody technology, starting from the fintechs.
And there's also 4 types of bank accounts, the N4, N3, N1, and N2, and not all of them require an ID or your name. No, they do have limits on how much money you can have per month. But it's become much easier, and I think that's also an opportunity for fintechs to just make it easy for anybody without even an ID or a process of identification to just open an account that's limited and start transacting.
So talking about opportunities, what is the biggest opportunity that fintechs could tackle in the next couple of years?
Wow, there's a lot of them. I think one big one is investing in other fintech companies, which is something that I learned from my friend Grant, who's somewhere over there. Okay, I think there's 2 big ones. One is building networks. Building networks, as Sonect is doing, as Cobra we are doing. With networks, you get a lot of leverage on distribution, and there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit here in Mexico. Everybody has a tiendita, they're selling fruits, they're doing everything. It's a hard-working country. So if you empower them with an app that transforms them into ATMs or say debt collectors, you can leverage that power. So I think that's an amazing opportunity in Mexico and Latin America. And secondly, I'll say, I call it like middle services. Like earlier, fintech entrepreneurs, we started going after the customer. We weren't really thinking on building infrastructure, like having all these middle services for that other entrepreneurs can jump in and build other services. So I think if you see something that is building services for other startups, I think those are great opportunities because we're going to get to see more and more startups.
Yeah, like Stripe, no? It's a platform for platforms.
Yeah.
We like taking the complete different approach, which is, and as our president said when he was presented with Cody, he's like, and what if there isn't internet? No? So and half the population in Mexico don't have access to a good internet connection. So we're working with a different approach on not depending on the Visa and MasterCard networks, not depending on the internet network, and still allow people to digitally transact within each other. So yeah, the greatest opportunity though. I wonder what would that be?
Jen?
I think there's still so much you can do on the SME side, like all the agarrotes and tienditas that need access to credits so that they can expand their store. Also a lot of with financial literacy, I think there you can do a lot. I think in general, the entire sector of SMEs has so many users you can enter in with FinTech. And I think there's a big opportunity.
You're right. We've built for users, for final consumers. We forget the guys in the middle, like the SMEs or the stores or even the services they need in order to make these things easier.
Yeah, and that's where the big money is right now. The SoftBanks of the world, they're investing in Series B of lenders who are focused strictly on SMEs. So if you follow the big smart money, I think you'll see where the big opportunity is at the moment.
Yes, it is. Before closing up, anyone from the public have a question?
Don't get too crowded, anybody.
Question right there.
Activity with online lending and now more and more with the wallets and the transactions.
I think insurance is a very interesting topic. So I was working alongside one Mexican startup which is called Mango Life, which maybe some of you guys know. And they really want to disrupt the insurance business in Mexico, and I think we will see more and more insurtech companies because, as I have learned during the time that I was living in Mexico, insurance is really maybe even a bigger hassle than banking.
I don't know about that one. It's a cultural thing, and we don't really use insurance. We just live. So I don't know. I'm going to say it's identity. Identity is a big issue. It's going to be needed for most of the fintech operations. But to answer the question, I think lending, savings, those are things in the financial industries. I don't see really a big change on where the P&L of banks and fintechs is going to be changing.
For example, credit. If you purchase something with your credit card, they take 3% to the merchant. But in Mexico, this new product, well, new product's been like around for 5 years. It's creating a lot of more consumption, which is the 3 meses sin intereses, 3 months without interest. So that charges a 7% interest on the merchant. And then you can go up to 6 months without interest, that goes up to 12. If you go to the 12 months without interest, it's 18% for the merchant. And the merchant still prefers to make the sale because he knows he's not going to sell otherwise. This girl is trying to use his dad's card, and his dad's not going to find out if it's 12 months charge, you know what I mean? So that happens a lot in Mexico. I wonder if the milk will ever be like, you'll be, how do you say that? Stop cowing the milk, milking the cow, no? But credit for sure is a big one. Loyalty, of course, as well. We work with event owners, and what they buy is pretty much, first of all, the certainty that the system's going to work. And the second one is the controls they have. Being able to just create a benefit like, okay, if anybody reloads more than $200, give them this. And then managing the redemption of those benefits, you know? And I have a good friend from a big bank, and he's told me the only way you can actually fight against Amazon is with loyalty programs. So I guess credit and loyalty, and knowing your customer and customer-centric personalization.
I think you're right that the insurance tech is huge in the U.S. It's probably one of the hottest areas, and it's a cultural thing. But access to basic banking is getting a lot of attention in the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about some of they're almost like social entrepreneurs in the U.S. addressing some of the banking issues in underbanked in Latin America? And then on the other end of the scale, are you guys seeing blockchain as a solution for some very complicated transactions like real estate transactions? Because that's happening a lot in the U.S.
Yes. So, two-sided question. To answer the first one, there is a lot of pitch decks being thrown around to U.S. investors on how to solve the underbanked problem in Mexico. The problem I see with that is that most of the solutions that are being offered require some sort of banking transaction to get them funded. So there hasn't been really a solution for that. And this is an interesting fact. Only 40% of the population in Mexico earn about $300 a month. 60% of the population is below that line. And they're not getting served by banks, not because they cannot build distribution channels. It's just that they can make money out of them. So that's the first part of the question. And second one, I love blockchain. I see it everywhere in the future. I think it's just a matter of time, cost. In Mexico, we're getting a little bit of drawback because Banco de Mexico kind of like throw this sana distancia, so like safe distance from it. So there isn't innovation for blockchain at the moment from regulated fintechs, but we're going to see a lot of things building on the blockchain related to Internet of Things, real estate. I think it's a real deal.
Well, thank you very much. Join me to give them a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to continue talking about money and FinTech because that is the #1 area of successes and activity in tech innovation in LatAm. But we're taking the flip side, and I actually ended up having one FinTech panel, but it was so big that I ended up breaking it into 2. So what I wanted to do is just talking about what are the unique challenges of lending, why there's so many opportunities in lending, and then talk to some of the founders who are solving it in creative ways. So our panelists today are Luis Sanchez, and Luis is CredFeed. We have Grant Taylor. Grant is from Quotanda.